You can't save the world if you can't pay your rent. That's what I'm seeing in a lot of leaders and a lot of successful entrepreneurs.
Welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of my personal heroes, a person who has done some incredible things in the world. This is Armand Arton. He is the founder and creator and also the ambassador of the Global Citizen Forum. He's the president and the CEO of Arton Capital and an executive partner at Arton Investments. He's a man with a vision of connecting the world, of bringing countries and humans together.
I do have the privilege of having 8 prime ministers and 4 presidents on a WhatsApp. What I can do with them is really giving them the tools to transform their economies. Because for every of my clients, 100,000 or million of investment, on the other side, we're transforming 1,000 life of a citizen of a country. Everybody needs it. Everybody needs to understand that the global citizenship is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Human mobility is like water. You can't stop it through barriers or borders or stones. It will flow over and around it. But if you control it, you direct it, it could be a powerful tool, a source of energy that can transform the world.
Greetings and welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I am your host, Espen. Today, I'm joined by one of my personal heroes, mentors, and a person who has done some incredible things in the world. This is Armand Arton. He is the founder and creator and also the ambassador of what's called the Global Citizen Forum. He's the president and the CEO of Arton Capital and an executive partner at Arton Investments. And knowing him somewhat now over some months, he's a man on a mission. He's a man with a vision of connecting the world, of bringing countries and humans together. He's a man that works for freedom and what it means to have the freedom to travel. He's a conscious man. He's a philanthropist. He's done some amazing things around the world. And we met not long ago when I had the opportunity to present on behalf of the Abu Dhabi government in Abu Dhabi. And after conversation, I realized that I had a lot to learn from this man. He has a BA in finance from a university, offices, I think, in 9 locations around the world, very connected in many of the communities around the world, including capital, philanthropy, global citizen, and also, I would say, teaching people what it means to not be bound by borders. Today, we're going to talk about what it means to be successful, what it means to live without borders in our own life, in our professional lives, and how we can come together to create unity consciousness within both countries as well as ourselves individually. I'm really grateful to be with you, Armand. How are you today, buddy?
Very good. Thank you for having me, Dr. Espen. And I conclude the same thing since we met. I believe that our path crossed for a reason. You're a very spiritual, enlightened person who is lifting the world around himself. And I felt the energy. I believe in the same mission. Happy to be in this podcast with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I remember the first time I heard a little bit about you, I did my research and I thought, wow, this is a man that I'd be honored to meet and have a conversation with. And then I found your TED Talk. Highly recommend this TED Talk to the listeners and viewers tuning in. You can just go to YouTube and type in Armand Arton TED Talk and it'll come up. And you talked about your family history, your grandfather and your father and the mission that they had, and now the mission that you're on with the global movement of bringing people together. I'd like you, if you can talk a little bit about who you are, what makes you, and what it means to be a global citizen. If we can start there, please.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me again the opportunity to talk about it. And I'm a son of an immigrant. In the last 4 generations in my family, we have really experienced every form of migration that we know today. From forced migration, where my grandparents were running away from a genocide, to my parents who were born in a communist country and wanted to just have a better life, so they became economic migrants, to myself, who really moved 4 continents in the span of the first 25 years of my life. And today I'm a citizen of 8 countries by choice. From really forced migration to migration by choice, as I said, every single form of it has been experienced. And I believe that's really shaped me as a person, defined my mission in my business. And it is really to free people from the only thing that they did not control, the passports that they were born with, which limits so much in terms of freedom, in terms of opportunity, of who you are and what you can become. So today's world represents a lot of opportunity for people to overcome these boundaries, these challenges created by us as humans. And that's what my industry does. Investment migration is a tool to overcome your limitations, to become a global citizen. And that's what my team of more than 100 people in 12 offices around the world does every day.
12 officers. Okay, not 9. My apologies. The growth is amazing. You know what I love? Hey?
Maybe there were 8 or 9 when we met, but
Wow. That tells you about the growth and how needed this is. You talk about this unity consciousness, yet we separate people through countries and borders. And as you said, you'll have a person born and raised in a specific country, and they'll be told that they cannot travel from one country to the other, or they will experience often harassment at airports and places because of their passport. This is very interesting. And so you've helped thousands of people now transcend borders through investment migration, right? But beyond the passports and the politics, I want to know, in your mind, what does it mean to truly belong to the world?
Espen, as I can imagine, you were born with a Norwegian passport, which is one of the best in the world. The world was your oyster. You were allowed to move freely and really live by your choices in Australia and around the world. 65 to 70% of the world's population is not having the same choices of movement as you. And I think that freedom of movement defines a lot about ourselves and about what we can do. So I think that in today's world, the freedom of movement is the biggest asset and is the biggest wealth somebody can acquire or transmit to the next generation. And that's what I see in my clients in terms of saying, it's not for me, it's for my kids. I want to make sure that they can do work and live anywhere they want in this world without being limited of what passport their father had or where they were born. So I think we live in that exponential movement, intensity of movement that we have seen in the last 25 years based on technology, based on aviation, based on overall general geopolitical system around the world, that people are just moving much more today than our parents. And I think our kids will even take it to a place further. So if your passport does not allow you that freedom, I think you will be very limited.
And that's where you come in. And this is so important. Like you mentioned, I'm born and raised in Norway, so I had a privilege of traveling to all the different countries with very few questions. But I've got friends that are born in different countries, and I'll travel with them, and they'll be, as I mentioned before, harassed at the airports. And so we talk about this notion of freedom and personal freedom and how important it is to be sovereign and free. But we can't choose the passport that we are born with, as you mentioned. So I love that you're solving this problem. Now, if we take this further, you work regularly. You work with presidents, billionaires, global institutions, and power structures, right? Behind the scenes, how are they shaping the future of global citizenship? Do you feel like they're helping the evolution or hindering the evolution, or is it different country to country?
We live in a very interesting time where I think we're seeing a shift where certain left democracies are moving more towards center and right. So I said in the last 20 years, from the beginning, early 2000 until now, we have seen a very vast liberal movement in democracies that allowed migration to unprecedented levels. And the world is becoming more free in terms of movement. With our platform called the Passport Index, which I invite people to check it out, because you can see where can you go with your passport today, and where do you need a visa on arrival, no visa, electronic visa, ETA, or paper visa.
Where does one go? This is brilliant. I was in your office. It's called the Passport Index. You got this big screen and you got pictures of all the passports. You can press the passport and it tells you exactly what your freedoms are. Where can one go to have their passport indexed?
And that's their personal mobility changes if you have more than one passport. So having a Chinese or a Middle Eastern passport mixed with a European or Caribbean will change from 140 to 160 to 170. And what I want to say is that we're tracking, and this changes, by the way, on a weekly or daily basis. Countries are canceling or creating visa-free agreements between themselves as we speak. So it's a movement like a stock market. You see it on the bottom of our platform. And we have something called the World Openness Score. So if all the countries in the world, 199, have 199 visa-free countries, the score is a 41,900 something. That number changes based on how many countries are signing those agreements. So today, I think we're, I believe, at 21 or 22,000 out of 41. So I'll say the world is around 50%, a little bit more than 55% open. During COVID, that number was really crushed to 17,000 because the world closed and imposed restrictions on mobility. Yes, in the last 25 years, the world is opening, even though we might believe that the extreme right populations and governments or closing borders, the reality, factual reality is not that. The world is opening. More and more countries are agreeing to visa-free mobility, canceling visas. However, something that everybody wants is control of movement. They will allow you, but they want to know where you're going, from where you're living, and where you're going. So I believe that transformation and the borders, which will come with extreme tracking based on electronic travel authorizations, will be the future norm between countries. It will be very quick, very easy. You don't have to go to embassy, but you will have to provide them a lot of information before you receive a barcode saying yes or no, you're allowed to go to my country. And that's the price I think we'll have to pay as humans. Some people will object in terms of privacy and questions, but I think that is what we'll have to give away in order to gain the freedom to go beyond the limitations of the single passports that we have in the future.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I find it interesting that if we look at it, the way I'm observing it, and maybe you can add to this or feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like certain countries, particularly in Europe, are becoming, some countries, I won't mention countries, but they're becoming somewhat more communist. We have, or at least socialist in some of their behavior. There is more and more tracking, more and more, I guess you could say, overview as to exactly what each individual is doing. The tax structures in many countries is changing. For you, you have one of your offices, I know, in Dubai. How many people don't we see migrate to the UAE? Not many years ago, when Norway, my home country, started changing their tax laws, I had a lot of very wealthy friends that just said, we've had a family business in Norway for 200 years. Now that the tax has changed, we can't operate anymore. We have to go to Switzerland. We have to go to the UAE. We have to move. We're seeing similar changes with the tax structures in England, or the UK, I should say. We're seeing major changes to the tax structures here in Australia, with new taxes coming in and things changing rapidly. What do you think is going to happen in the next few years? I know there are, as I mentioned, a lot of people migrating to the UAE, but other places as well. What have you, as you're tracking this, what have you seen in terms of not just the wealthy, but people in general migrating as the world is changing?
Excellent remarks. And as we discussed when we met, one of the wealthiest person from your home country, the Frederiksen, relocated. He was one of the first clients of our industry, where he got a Cyprus passport in the early 2010, and he moved to London with it. Happily lived there for 25 years with a Cypriot passport as a non-dom, I can imagine. Now, very publicly, he made the statement that the UK is no longer the best place to live for billionaires like him, and he moved to Dubai. What I have seen in this industry, being in it for more than 20 years, is that when I started, traditionally was first generation of new money, of new wealth, coming from East, having this dream to go West, coming from South, trying to go North. 90% was defined by that flow and that direction of capital, human and financial. Today, 50% is in the other direction. 50% is North, trying to diversify and go away from socialism, communism, woke culture, going to Dubai, going to Singapore, going to Italy, which surprisingly offers a very fresh look on migration, on woke culture, and on taxation. You have still Italians who don't like it and they want to come to Dubai, but you have Americans, and that's something that for the first time, I think in the last 15 years, we have seen a push of the ultra high net worth segment of Americans who wants to leave the United States. Some want to go to New Zealand, to Canada, to Europe, or to Dubai. So I think this new movement of all, I'll call it all directional on the ultra high and the high net worth segment is just because they're the first one who can afford it to do it quickly through our industry. But it is a indication of what's happening on the mid-level and on the lower level, right? I think that is a precursor of a movement that will only accelerate in the future.
I think you're spot on. And I see this with a lot of people, not just ultra high net worths, but people in general going, hang on, I run my business over here and this is how much it's costing me. And now they're talking about applying some new taxes here in Australia too, which means basically if you own a property portfolio, if the property portfolio increases in value, even if you don't sell, they're proposing that you get taxed on that as well. So they get taxed on the increased value of the property without selling. The value is to be determined by the Australian government. And if you have a family, a mother, a father, and maybe two kids, and they own two investment properties, if those investment properties go up, like they have, for example, in Queensland, where I live, a lot, since a lot of people from Victoria and New South Wales moved to Queensland after COVID, very strict, particularly in Victoria. So they wanted more freedom, go figure that, less boundaries, less isolation. And so they came to Queensland, not for the only reason, but one of the major reasons. And now if they have two homes and the value of those homes have gone up, even if they haven't sold, if they live in one and maybe rent out the other, if the value goes up 200,000, they might be taxed on that without selling. And if they do sell, they don't get a tax refund. And so I won't quote too much in detail, but what we're seeing is very interesting because it's almost like they're squeezing out the middle class. Because I know if you have that situation, you might not have the opportunity to support that. Double-digit interest rates and on two houses and suddenly a massive tax from the government saying that you need to pay this without having the cash flow. So I'm just seeing a lot of changes like that. And I'm just interested, as you're observing something similar, it looks like to me that some countries are metaphorically shooting themselves in the foot, taxing people more, not necessarily having people stay. How many people, do you have any numbers on how many people are migrating to the UAE this year? It was like 1 million. There's like a lot of people.
6,000 plus, yes.
Yeah, wow, in a year, right? Wow, what a change. I want to quickly, anything you want to add to that before I move over to the Global Citizen Forum?
No, I think that, as I said, investment migration is an indicator of a movement that just comes slower, which is, I would say, the most affluent or middle class that will follow, just that they will have to look for other than the investment migration tools, which is economic migration, point system. But in general, it is something that I think will only accelerate in the future. So companies like ours, platform like ours, like the Passport Index, will only become more and more useful in the future. And at the crossroad of these decisions, people as well as governments will have to take. Because as you mentioned, the United Kingdom is a great example right now where some of our latest surveys are trending in all the major news outlets, showing the loss of ultra high net worth residents and citizens of UK exiting because of the current political situation, tax situation, and even future intentions to even make it worse. We do something called election polls as well. So every time before election and after elections, we measure what millionaires would do if party A or party B. So as I said, today the world is much more polarized, it's much more mobile, and you can transfer your wealth in a day from a country A to a country B, something that 25 years ago was not possible. So people don't think twice. If they can save million, if they can have a better life, the root where they were born, the flag, doesn't mean anything.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing, giving the power back to the people. And like I said, when I watched a TED Talk, I got truth bumps. I felt like this is amazing because people talk about freedom. Freedom is one of my highest values, freedom and liberty. And so for me to have multiple passports and the opportunity to travel, and I'm just really happy that you're doing what you're doing. I want to quickly ask, the Global Citizen Forum, it's more than a group of individuals coming together to celebrate freedom within their passports, but it's becoming a movement. And I wanted you to talk to us a little bit about the Global Citizen Forum as a movement and what it means. And if you can, please, I'd like you to add in, whenever appropriate, the top 3 steps, because right now people are watching this going, okay, I get it. I'm living in this country. I might not want to live here. or I want to at least have the option to go elsewhere or travel, I'd like you to see if you can weave in some of the steps that someone would take in order to become a global citizen. So maybe we start with the forum, please.
Yes, the forum started as a conference. I wanted to create an event during a day between the stakeholders of this industry, invite the governments, invite some of the clients, and discuss relevant topics that will influence where the industry could go. Over the last 15 years, we have done more than 8 events around the world. So we started in Dubai, went to Canada, Montenegro, Armenia, Davos, New York. And then in the last 3 years, we have been hosted in the United Arab Emirates by Sheikh Saud from Ras Al Khaimah, who wanted to have that family, that community, and these topics in his Emirates. During the last 3 years, that Emirates was transformed. I cannot take credit for it 100%, but the people, the investors, the topics we brought in made today Iraq as one of the top destinations for investing and living around the world. And that's what we try to do. We try to transform through the forum, not only the life of our clients, but as well the life of citizens of many countries. Yes, I do have the privilege of having 8 prime ministers and 4 presidents on a WhatsApp, but what I can do with them over the span of a day or a conference or meeting I just came back from one in Africa, is really giving them the tools to transform their economies. Because for every of my clients, 100,000 or million of investment, on the other side, we're transforming 1,000 life of a citizen of a country. And this is the power of the investment migration that many politicians or journalists don't understand. They see it as a rich person cutting the red robe and getting a faster process and a freedom. But his money has an impact that in some of the countries I work with represent 25% of the GDP of that country. So small countries, small economies, 1 billion to 2 billion economies. But yeah, 500 million does change a lot of lives in the Caribbean. When the hurricane season hits, which, is a Russian roulette every year. I just came from the Caribbean 3 weeks ago when Hurricane Arton was coming. And all of the states I work with in the Caribbean have an emergency funds that is being created thanks to our investors. So instead of, in case of calamity and hundreds of millions of dollars being affected in any of these hurricanes in the livelihood of many families, instead of begging the West and the IMF and the World Bank and the United States for money, they're now independent. They have their fucking money. They have their slashed funds for emergency, and they can resolve their problems themselves thanks to this industry. Same thing is happening in Africa. Many countries depending on natural resources are trying to diversify their economies. But when you have gold, diamonds, and uranium, until it's not finished, you don't think about it. But again, look at the UAE. They have took that path of diversification in the last 20 years because they knew it's going to come to an end. And today their economy is flourishing. And it's flourishing because of people like you and me who came into this country and is transforming it. They're not giving passports to everybody. They're giving golden visas. And that is something that many other countries are taking as an example of how attracting successful businessmen, investors into a country is not only about the dollar sign that comes at the end of the transaction. It's about how these people can transform the livelihood of millions of citizens of that country. And I think this is what the Global Citizen Forum is about, is talking about the benefits beyond the dollars.
Oh, I love that. What are the top 3 things that an individual watching now can take if they want to expand their opportunity to travel internationally?
There's a good news and a bad news for everybody. The bad news for those who believe they don't need that service and don't even thought about it before is that even with your powerful passports today, does not mean that in the future you'll have the same freedom of movement. I always give the example of some of my clients who 60 years ago were born in Tehran, in Iran, and they were traveling in Europe and they were welcome in every country during the Shah. Today, their freedom is shrinked to about 25% of what it was 60 years ago. And they have no input in what happened in their country or in their power of a passport. And today, even the most powerful European passports will be subject to, as I said, electronic travel authorizations. Every country, I believe 80 to 90% of the 199 countries, will have a platform, an ETA that will say yes or no to every passenger. So something that the 75% of the world that were born with a bad passports know very well, and that's why they want to have a 2 or a 3. Those 25% that don't have an idea yet and think that they don't need it, I think in the future they will realize they need it. So I think everybody needs it. Everybody needs to understand that the global citizenship is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's just how badly you need it. For some, it's a necessity because bombs are falling on their roofs, because their dictators are closing radio stations, there is wars in neighboring countries or in their own countries. So they, of course, are on the forefront of urgency. And those who have the luxury of not needing it now, but I'm telling you, have it. Better to take it when you don't need it.
It's interesting because it depends on how sideways you want to take this conversation. But during COVID, I was studying and worried about and still keep my eyes on, let's say, smart cities. No, you cannot travel without this or that, and you need to apply for a permit and so on. It could be points, carbon points, that if you've had too high carbon emission, then that will be affecting your opportunity to travel. And then the next part that you're adding now is the passport. Could you imagine that, being born in a country and then being discriminated against because you have a different passport? And or, as we know from my research, at least I've seen that they're already trialing smart cities in certain parts of the UK and other parts of the world. What would happen if they say to you, no, you're going to live in a smart city, everything is tracked, everything is monitored, there's facial recognition, you can't do this, you can't do that, and because of your passport, you can only travel to 3 countries. Do you think something like that is too far-fetched, or am I already speaking something that might be in development without naming any detail? What are your thoughts?
It's happening in pockets around the world where I think highly developed technology allows for the smart cities, smart governments to really control what I call paperless movement of people. So your face is your passport. I just walked in this morning in UAE at 8 o'clock in the morning without even lifting the passport from my pocket, right? So I just walked through the tunnel, scanned my face, welcome back Armand Arton, and the gate opened. The country I left with from South Africa didn't have the same level of technology. So what I'm saying is that they will be in Europe, in North America, in the Gulf countries, in probably China and some Southeast countries, really paperless and featureless movement, allowing people to move. But as soon as you have to go from one pocket to the other one, that little paper or that steel document will be physically needed, just because those governments will never share the same data. And they will require an internationally, which is managed right now by the United Nations, a special division called ICAO, identity document saying who is Espen. The Norwegian and the European knows who is Espen, Dubai knows who is Espen, but when you go to Africa, that face will not open the gate. So I think that's, yes, I just wonder when the system says that face has 4 passports, is the gate going to open, or are they going to say, please come for a talk?
Or let alone 8. Wow. Yeah, wow. Okay. So let's say, like you mentioned, and I agree, the smart cities are under development. And do you think we're going to see carbon footprint being a limitation for travel in terms of international freedoms? No?
No, I believe that unfortunately, with kind of the movement from the left, I mentioned at the beginning of our call, towards the center and the right, environment and carbon will be much less important topics for governments in terms of economies and freedom of movement.
You gave us a really good heads up before when you spoke to how certain individuals that may not think that this is important right now, I've got an okay passport, I can travel, I don't think it's necessary. They may have a rude awakening in the future if things change. So that was really useful, because that means that we can all start to prepare ourselves right now by asking the question, am I free to travel internationally? What things do I need to set in place now to have those freedoms? Because I love to travel. I said to you a long time ago, or some months ago, I said, one of my favorite expressions that I've lived by my whole life is that the world is my home and each country is just another room in the house. So for
Really?
me, that is so important, and giving myself the opportunity to have that freedom. I've got an Aussie passport, an Australian passport, and I've got a Norwegian one. But for years, they wouldn't allow dual citizenship, but that's now all in effect. So I want to ask, what are the top three things that a person can do right now to make sure that we allow ourselves that we can take action now if we decide to ensure that those freedoms will continue in the future, and maybe with the intention of becoming a global citizen? What are the top three steps that you recommend?
So it's like any of you, when you take an insurance, you don't take a life insurance when you're sick. You can take an insurance on your car when it's broken. So you have to start thinking about those things in advance. And the same ways as you're going to plan about how much money I need for a retirement, how much money I have to put on the side. You have to think the same way as, where do I want to spend the rest of my life? Do I want to die in the country where I'm born, or maybe not? And for me, in my own personal planning, it was important to have a North American passport, which I have as a Canadian, a European passport, allowing me to have 28 countries, the freedom to choose where to live and work, one African passport, because I do believe in the power of Africa, in the future of Africa, and that one day there will be an African Union passport, allowing to do the same thing as in Europe or in the States, freedom of movement within the 52 countries. I don't see myself in Asia. Okay, so for me, Asia is less important. But as you can imagine, more than half of the people are from in that part of the world today, having a passport from there, they would like to have the option to travel to the Americas, to Europe, and to Africa. And how to start planning it is understanding or envisioning your movement in the future and taking a residence or taking a citizenship. If you're young, if you're talented, there is various residences you can take, like in the Dubai, for digital nomad, for skilled workers, for talent, giving you those accesses with a small investment. If you are wealthy and you want to have a permanent solution, you can invest in financial instruments, bonds, shares, real estate that give you directly the residence or the citizenship of the country. So I'd say if you can have 3 to 4 passports, this is having the Rolls Royce of mobility, right? If you want to have a mix of residency and one Caribbean passports, which still give you 140 countries visa-free today, is the middle-class solution of combos. But everybody needs a solution. If it's a single product solution, if it's a mix of 3 products, and it could be a golden visa in a country, digital nomads, to a portfolio. I have clients that have 6 products with us. Variety of residences for taxation, residences for immigration, and citizenship products, like people do when they're billionaires. You the same way as you'll have your estate planning, making sure that the asset goes to your family with the less tax impact, and they will be split exactly the way you want, and not as the countries decide on your behalf. It's the same thing with the freedom you want to give to your kids and the passports and the residences that you're going to give as your legacy.
Yeah, spot on. I find that interesting that the world is opening and this is happening, and it allows us the space and the freedom to look into these things. So for listeners and viewers, maybe take a note, write that down. Where do I want to live in the future? What kind of passports and freedom of movement do I want to make sure that my children has? For me, I came to Australia, 2005, lived here 20 years exactly now. And only 2 years ago, I thought to myself, hang on, I've had a permanent residency, a PR, in Australia for years, but I don't yet have a passport. I thought I don't need one, it's fine. But then I realized that if I travel a lot, which I do for work, presenting all around the world, if I spend more than 3 out of 5 years out of the country, I can lose my opportunity to come back. And I have a son in this country. So it just dawned on me how risky it was not to have that passport. So I'm really feeling the gravity of what you're sharing here. And it could be a great thing for listeners and viewers to take this to heart and write down what this, I'm sure you've done estate planning and you've prepared for your succession and so on and so forth. And if you haven't, that's definitely something to consider. And as part of your succession, what does that look like in terms of global movement for you and for the family, for your bloodline and for your lineage? I think this is an amazing conversation to have. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. You mentioned the passport index. Are people able to go to your website and look at their passport and look at their freedoms there, or would they have to go somewhere else?
Yes, they can download the app on Apple and Google platforms. We have more than millions of downloads of people. That allows you to add your passport. You can scan it or you can tap it and it will read which nationality you have. And then it will have your personal mobility in a beautiful map of the world. And you will see what is green for you and what is not. But the most useful is to understand with the passports you have, or if you're questioning, comparing two passports, which countries you can visit with passport A and a passport B. And you can add 2, 3, 4 passports on the web platform to really increase that personal mobility and have your situation if you are a global citizen. But the most powerful tool is that not only you can see that you need an ETA or an e-visa, but you can click and apply from there. So this is a transformational initiative on our platform, that we're not only providing free information, but when clients want to apply from the platform, we're sending them to the right government platform or the right company to process that visa. And soon we'll be able to process it directly by one click, like a PayPal, having all your information and being able to send it to the government, process it, and give you back the barcode so you can take your next flight.
Awesome. Armand, when we first met, it took me only a few minutes to recognize that I wasn't just having a conversation with a man who was successful, who had impacted the world on a giant, tremendously beautiful scale, but also that I was having a conversation with someone that was really heart-centered, really present, really loving and caring, really conscious. So I really enjoyed that, because I, for one, don't just have verbal conversations. I tune into people's energy, I sense their intention, I feel what they're feeling, and I discern if this is someone that I like to spend time with, and if this is someone that, inspires me. And you ticked all those boxes. I want to know from you, having contact and connection with literally the change makers of this planet, what role do you believe this type of leadership, like conscious leadership, where consciousness comes first, where love comes first, where there is a true intention to create unity, love, and coherence on the planet, what role do you think that's going to play in the world moving forward when it comes to what governments and what kind of decisions are being made on a global scale?
Thank you for the kind words first.
Sure.
I share the same opinion about you. I'm happy we're having this conversation. I believe that some smart person told me many years ago, you can't save the world if you can't pay your rent. And that's what I'm seeing in a lot of leaders and a lot of successful entrepreneurs. There is this element of first succeeding themselves before helping the other person. And I'm sure you have heard the story of the airplane. Put your mask first before you give it to the person next to you. When it comes to game changers and people in high position who can change the world, definitely they have a level of success that have humbled their personal needs first. And now they're in a stage where it's beyond the money. It's something that they want to leave a legacy or make their own mark in the world. But I think generationally as well, what we're seeing is, I'm just turning 50 next year, and I see that generation, I don't know, now it's called X, I believe we are part of the X generation, is coming to position of power. And the baby boomers are leaving. So I think that our generation is much more conscious than the previous one. And I believe the next one will be a further one. And you can look at Burning Man last week. You will see that a change of generation of people going. It's not the oldest, it's not the youngest one, but it's really between 35 and 55 who are in a position of controlling the world for the next generation. In a position of CEOs or position of power in governments, I think the mind shift of understanding how everything is interconnected, and that connectivity from to spirituality and awareness is breathing through, I think, our generation, and hopefully will become part of the education and the DNA for the next generations ahead.
I see the same trend. It's beautiful, that observation. I look at my parents and I ask, what did they know about personal development? What access did they have to these tools? And I'd say none. I grew up in a family where we didn't talk about emotions. It was not common to talk about emotions around the dinner table. I grew up suppressing emotions, which is why I teach them, because it took me 20 years to work them out. But then we have parents like you. You're an amazing dad. I'm an amazing father. I love being present with my son, talking about emotions, being gentle within our boundaries necessary. But gosh, the tools that I have available that he's learning, the stuff that he will know that I don't know that he's going to pass on. I'm really excited for the future. So I love your take on that. I think this is beautiful. Do you see that changing on a governmental level as well when you talk to presidents? And do you see that?
Unfortunately, the governmental level is still the older generation. I think it's yet to see that. I think in businesses, you see it first, then in governments, it has, I'd say, 10 to 20 years delay. But you're seeing more and more, I think, younger heads of states. And I think that's what we're going to see, how much of spirituality they can bring in the transformation. But it's much harder to change things in a government than in a company. It will take a longer time.
Yeah, I feel that. Okay, you're in the top point something 1% of the world. I want to know, how does one get to the level that you're at? You're in your 40s. I'm in my 40s. Okay, I've got some work to do. But I want to know, how do you balance capitalism, philanthropy, being a humanitarian, being a father, and being a world leader? How do you balance that?
You can't. I think if you're a leader, you're a machine. If you want to be transformative in any sector, that is a priority. And I'm trying to be a good father, a good husband, but I believe my passion for what I'm doing is definitely taking the most of my space as a person, in my mind, in my dreams, and everybody's trying to balance. I think it's a failure game. I think just some people are destined to do some great things, and there is a price to pay, and that's price is called unbalance. Unbalanced sleep, emotions, time with family, travel. But I guess if you want to change things, balance is not the tool. Again, financially, you could be 0.01% of the world in terms of a number at the bank statement, and you can be miserable. You can also have zero impact in the world, and you can be a very mean person. I think the formula of success, and one of my friends, Robin Sharma, wrote the latest book called The Wealth That Money Can Buy. It's 8 different things that will make you wealthy. And I think that financial, and he said it is 1 out of 8. The health, the family, the balance, what you're giving back to community, personal development, physical exercise, mental well-being, love, caring, all this is combining, I would say, a portfolio of things will define how wealthy you are.
I love that. Wealth, from its original Latin derivation, means well-being, not just money. Thank you for highlighting that that's only one small part of it. And your humility that I've witnessed over these many months has been certainly a great character testament to the grounded path that you walk and how you really dedicate yourself. And honestly, I acknowledge and appreciate. I asked about balance, and you said pretty much no balance. You didn't try and sugarcoat it. You just said, hey, listen, if you're out to change the world, there are sacrifices. And I know, and I appreciate that. A couple of last questions before we let you go. I want to ask, if you were to appoint anyone, actually, let me change the question. I want to ask this question first. What have you achieved before you leave this human experience? What is your grand vision? What is the thing that the future generations will talk about when they mention the name Armand Arton?
Oh, I want to transform the way billions of people are crossing a border. And I think through the platforms we're building, the government initiatives, the tools of our industry, I will make sure that the brand of Arton is a part of that journey for a frictionless and better and easier movement of human beings around the world. It could be from a digital visa via passport index to residency and citizenship. And even today, I have impacted the life maybe of 25,000. My goal is to impact the life of billions. So I need to scale out the tools through technology in order to facilitate that.
I love that. Really, the way I'm picking this up, is it about unity? Is that about right? Bringing people together, allowing freedom?
I believe a lot of our problems in the world today is because people don't understand each other, and they don't understand each other because they don't travel, and they don't travel because sometimes they can't. solving the mobility will solve a lot of other problems in the world.
It's interesting, as the old saying goes, travel is the best education. And I notice this when I take my son around the world. It's when he goes to a new culture, it's like, wow, I can't believe they do that. How amazing. It's like the standard educational curriculum in countries like Australia, not only, but of course part of it, they're outdated. We're not learning the things at school that we need to learn. And so I find that really interesting that you're allowing that travel to take place and the experiences for people to take place as they go to a new culture and experience that culture and the language and opening and removing those borders. It's really beautiful. Before I ask the last question, my friend, I want to ask, is there anything else that you would like to add? Is there anything that I missed? Anything that you feel is important for our listeners and viewers to know about, or anything that you feel is coming through?
No, I think, again, as a summary, is just to say that a global citizen is not only somebody that can travel the world and has multiple passports or residence in his pocket, but it is to understand how interconnected we are. That the choices, the freedom that comes with every of your decision as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a leader of a country, impacts somebody, in some cases, millions of other people around the world. Once you understand this connectivity, and you take responsibility for it, I think you will become a true global citizen.
Mic drop moment. Oof. As I say, the 12 universal laws, and the number one law of the 12 universal laws is the law of unity. So you're in alignment with the law of all laws by doing what you're doing. And I, for one, thank you for that. Where do people go to learn more about you? Global Citizen Movement, Global Citizen Forum, and anything else that's going to be useful for the people watching and listening, thinking, okay, I want to really make sure that I have this prepped for myself, my family, and my children. Where do they go?
Passportindex.org is the platform that can provide you with this basic information on how powerful is your passport, where can you go today, and what you need to do in the future. Arton Capital .com is our financial advisory company that can help you achieve those targets by investing into, as I mentioned, different residency and citizenship. And Global Citizen Forum is our nonprofit platform that gathers every year. In 2026, we'll soon announce the place and the time where you're welcome to join and hear everything about what it takes and what it is to be a global citizen. So thank you again for having me, Espen, and for sharing through your platform what we do. And I'll be humbled to help any of the listeners and become a global citizen.
Oh, that's amazing. Last question for you, straight off the cuff. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. I want you now to imagine that you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered, watching, they're tuning in to your message to the world. Feel free, take your time, take a breath. And when you're ready, please share. What is your message to the world right now?
For the last 8 years, I'm extremely privileged to go to the United Nations General Assembly. So I'm on the floor with 199, sometimes 195 world leaders. I don't go and speak in front of them, but I have the opportunity to listen to them and to speak to a lot of them in the sidelines of it. If today I would have the opportunity to speak at the United Nations and say a very short sentence, is that human mobility is like water. You can't stop it through barriers or borders or stones. It will flow over and around it. But if you control it and you direct it, it could be a powerful tool, a source of energy that can transform the world. So instead of stopping it, let's create a new version of migration that will empower human mobility in a better brand than what migration is today.
Woo! Be like water. Awesome. Thank you so much, Armand. Really appreciate your time, bro. And I, for one, will be listening to this over and over again. And I hope that listeners and viewers will be tuning into this and sharing this with as many people as you can, because it only takes one individual to know what's happening in the world, how certain countries are changing, what we can do about it now, and to think ahead as to what we can do to consider becoming global citizens and making sure that we are not restricted or constricted by boundaries or borders in any way, shape, or form. So really thanking you for coming onto the show today, buddy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I hope some government officials and UN agencies can listen as well and pick up some ideas. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'll be sure to email it to them. If they listen to it or not, I don't know, but we'll send it off.
Thank you.
This is Armand Arton, everybody. Thanks for your time.